In this video, we're going to be attaching the wires to your Gemma-M0 that will connect it to the Teensy device and to the sensor that you're using. Before we do that though, I wanted to just talk a little bit about these wires and why their length is so important. When we sense capacitive touch like this, see how the touch to my sensor, which I'm using an old silver spoon for this, the signal that this is sensing is tiny, infinitesimal little electrical signals, and so the Gemma is extremely sensitive. And so we don't want this wire to be very long, because the longer it is, the more chance there is for interference. For example, you can see if you watch the little red light here blinking, when I touch that, the light goes on. But also when I get near the wire, that light blinks a little bit. In fact, if I use 3 fingers on the wire, not on the spoon, it'll touch. So we want this short wire to be as short as possible to minimize interference. On the other hand, once the signal gets to the Gemma amplifies it into a real strong, what's called a low impedance signal, and that's sent over here to the Teensy. And it doesn't really matter what I do to these wires, it's not going to interfere with the signal. So that means that you want the Gemma to be as close to your sensor as possible with the shortest wire. And if you need long wires, you put them here in the part that goes from the Gemma to the Teensy. Now you need wires to connect your Gemma-M0 boards to your Teensy, and so you can buy wires with 3 conductors in them, or you can make your own. I've got some here that are wire wrap wires. I like these because they're super fine. They're like 32 gauge and they're very flexible. When you get done, you want it to look something like this, a nice flexible wire that you can put inside of clothing or on your art project, whatever it is you're doing. The way you do that is just to take these 3 wires, which I've cut ahead of time. Make sure you get it as long as you need for your project. And you just sort of bundle them together and give them a twist, and then away you go, like this. And so forth. And finally we get to the end. You don't have to twist it all the way to the end because you're going to use these. You're going to strip these wires and connect them to the Teensy eventually. So there we have a nice cable that'll be very flexible and useful for your art project. Now it's time to connect our wires to the Gemma-M0. But before we do that, let's have a quick demonstration of stripping wires. If you have got one of these wire strippers, which are about 15 or 16 bucks, it's pretty simple. You just put the wire in there like that, and the wire is stripped. Sometimes you have to do a little extra if you don't get the right length the first time. There you go. However, if you didn't have one of those, it's no problem. You can do it with a regular pair of wire cutters of any sort, diagonal pliers or anything that has a cutting blade. And what you do is you put your cutters on there, but you don't cut, you just squeeze just gently so it doesn't cut through the wire, and give it a pull, and it'll pull that insulation right off of there. Now to connect your wires, the first thing you want to do after you've twisted them together like this, they're probably not the same length. And so the first thing we're going to do is just trim those all to the same length, like that. And then we're going to strip them. About a 1/2 inch or so is what you need. There we go. And now it's time to connect them to the Gemma. Looking at your Gemma, you need to identify which pads these wires go to. So you put it like this with the USB at the top and the black connector at the bottom. And what you want to connect is the black wire here to this top one on the right, the yellow wire to the middle, and the red wire to the bottom one on the right-hand side. It's real important that you not mix those up. To solder these on, we just take the wire, we'll start with the black one, which goes to ground on the top. Again, be sure that the USB is on the top so that you're not soldering it to the wrong one. And we stick that through the hole and kind of bend it over like that to give it a mechanical connection. It's good to hold that down there with your finger while you solder. Just touch your soldering iron to it. There we go. And the same for the other 2 wires. Now these wires can be a little bit fragile, so once you've got them soldered on there properly and you've checked, what we want to do is make a strain relief for it. So we're going to fold it under like this, just kind of gently press those against the Gemma board. We're going to take the other end of the wire and just put it through this hole right here, like that, and pull it through gently. And once that's done, I'm going to do it again. Wrap around twice. Pull that through. And the second time around, sort of hold it on the bottom and then pull it fairly tight and give it a squeeze like that. And what that does is it makes a good strain relief. So when you pull on this, it's not pulling directly on the wires and you're not going to break those thin wires off. And the last thing we need to do is to attach the sensor wire to the Gemma. It's going to go onto this pin labeled A1 right here. And I like to use a stranded wire, a little heavier than those other ones, because stranded wires are nice and flexible and it's going to be connected to our sensor. And to start with, give that a little twist just to make it easier so the wires don't fray out. And maybe put a little kink in that and put it into the Gemma. It's tricky working with these tiny wires for sure. Fold it over so that it's held on there, and we'll solder it. And we're done.